Hi and welcome to day 17 of the 30 Days of Photoshop. My name's Kevin Aronson from Hampshire School of Photography, and today we're looking at curves. Curves has remained a favourite of a great many Photoshop users, preferring it over to levels because of its flexibility. Let's see what we can do with this image with just a few tweaks. As normal, I'm going to make a copy, which is Command or Control J, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC. In my case, I'm on a Mac, so it's Command J, and there's my copy. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to open up my adjustments panel. If you can't see it, and if it's not actually showing on your desktop, go up to your Windows menu, and the third one down is adjustments. Just click on that and it should appear. Once it appears, open it up, and I'm going to draw it out so it's freestanding. Of these icons, the one we want is number 3, which is curves. Yesterday we looked at levels, today it's curves, and there is the curves dialog box. Now, it's called a curve because you can create curves with the graph that appears on the tool, that way or any kind of squiggly way in between. Let's have a look and see what this is all about. So a bit like a histogram, blacks are at this end, whites are at the far right. This line represents your ability to transform the brightness or the tonality within the range from pure black to pure white, mid-tones in the middle obviously. If you just grab the middle with your mouse and push it up very slightly, the picture brightens up. If you push it down a little bit, it darkens down. If you grab the top, which is where the highlights are, then just the highlights should adjust. If you go too far, watch what happens down here if you start dragging it too far up here. You then start to find that the shadows are adjusted as well. It's not just the highlights, because that curve passed right through the shadows area. So they've all been brightened up. If I pick the highlights and drag them down, the same thing happens. As well as the highlights going down, the shadows go down. You really have to be quite subtle with it, just small amounts, just small tweaks. One of the most famous and popular tweaks is what's known as the S curve, where you just give a slight tweak upwards for the highlights, a slight tweak downwards for the shadows, and you end up with this very high contrast image. That's what we started with. That's what we've got now. That's what we started with. That's what we got now. So before and after. And you can see it has a much more high impact look. And if you find that a number of your images have quite a low contrast, this is quite common I find among particularly new photographers, just employing a very simple S curve will give the picture it needs to make it pop. Just going to press Command Z to undo that. Reset it back. That's good. Okay, let's look at another picture. So here's a picture I took about 3 years ago. I think it's in Somerset, and we were staying on a campsite. Woke up one morning, looked out, and I saw this scene. Now the scene to my eyes looked a lot better than it does here, and that's because the camera has deliberately overexposed the image to bring out detail in the foreground. But it's left the sky too bright. Now I remember seeing a sky that had a lot more stuff going on and caused me to take the picture. Let's create a copy of this. Command or Control J, and then we're going to open up curves. So I'm just going to move the curves down, underexpose the highlights and just drop them down a little bit and see, look, there is some detail coming out now. Now I know that if I drag this to where I want it, that's going to happen, but I'm not overly bothered actually. As I've dragged the curve down so much, the shadows and even some of the midtones have dropped a huge amount, and this picture has been rendered well, it's crushed the black so much you can't see anything going on, which is not a problem because we have a mask on this layer, same as we did with levels. So if I click on that mask, click on brush, click on black as my foreground color, I can now paint on here. Oops, need to push my opacity up to 100, and I can paint away all that curve adjustment from the foreground. Let me just reduce the opacity right down now, make it a bit bigger while I do the end bits. So I've got a very soft edge now. It's feathered quite a bit. So the transition from the trees to the sky is not so obvious. And I think that's about where I want to be. Okay. So now I'm looking at the sky and I'm thinking, is that where I want it? Well, let's have a look at the opacity. Let's take it right off. See, that's how it was. Just going to tweak it up to a point where I think, yeah, that looks realistic. Maybe there. Something like that. That's good. The foreground to me is lacking. It lacks punch. So I'm going to create another layer. Another adjustment layer. There it is. And this time I'm going to draw the midtones down to already that the foreground's looking way, way better. I like that. That's good. But it has impacted the sky. So again, I'm going to paint on that mask with the opposite colour to just bring some light back into that sky. Boom. That'll do. That'll do for this. Now we've got a picture which is much, much better. But finally, I would like to give a little bit of a colour tweak to the foreground. Maybe bring a little bit of yellow, bit of early morning kind of sun shining through a hazy sky, that kind of look. So I'm going to create one more, and this time I'm going to select from this drop down list. We've been using curves so far in the RGB setting, which controls all three colours together, red, green, blue. But if I click on there, I can pick the colour I want to change. Now I want to add a bit of yellow, and there is no yellow here, but there is blue. Let me click on blue. And the way these curves work with colours is that if you drag them to the left, they increase the blue, or they increase the colour you've selected. If you drag them to the right, they increase the opposite colour, and the opposite of blue is yellow. So if I just drag this down now, I'm actually going to think I prefer to do the highlights. Yes, better. Just the highlights. Okay. Can I go more than I need to? There. And again, we go back to the opacity slider. But the first thing I have to do, of course, is take away those clouds. Take away those clouds, because I don't want the clouds that colour. I want the clouds back as they were. Oops. So let's just bring back the colour of those clouds. Rushing it. The edges won't be as good as they could be because I am rushing it. But it's just so you can get an idea in principle what's going on here. So now we've got this lovely kind of early morning yellowy tinge to the foreground. Probably a bit too much, so again I go to the opacity slider, take it right off and just bring a little bit back in, just about there, a little bit, and there we go. Now I'm going to select all three of those curves and I'm going to press Command G or Control G on a PC and put them into a single group, and now I can just click on that eyeball there and show the picture before we started. That's what we had to begin with. That's what we ended up with. I think you'll agree that curves are a really useful and highly versatile tool. Thanks for watching. If you're not watching this as part of the 30 days of Photoshop sequence, maybe you just discovered this floating around on the internet somewhere, then check out phototeacher.blog and you have access to the whole 30 days of Photoshop completely free of charge. If you'd like to find out about our workshops, and by that I mean physical workshops in a classroom, then we have a training centre in Hampshire, North Hampshire, in the town of Fleet. And by all means, check out the website, which is gohsp.com. And there you'll find details about our Photoshop courses, Lightroom courses, as well as all our photography courses, including studio work and Flash. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the next one. Hopefully meet you someday at one of our courses. Cheers.